Exploring the depths of World War I. Causes, progressions, and lasting impacts.
Before World War I, Europe was a complex web of alliances and rivalries. Major powers like Britain, France, Germany, and Austria-Hungary vied for dominance, with tensions exacerbated by militarism and territorial disputes. The Balkans, often termed the powder keg of Europe, were particularly unstable, marked by nationalistic fervour and political upheaval.
Nationalism and imperialism were significant catalysts for World War I. The fervent pride in one's nation and the quest for imperial expansion drove countries into a competitive stance, eager to assert their dominance. This era saw a scramble for colonies and influence, particularly in Africa and Asia, heightening tensions among European powers. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo on June 28, 1914, by a Serbian nationalist was the immediate spark that ignited World War I. This event led Austria-Hungary to issue an ultimatum to Serbia, setting off a chain reaction of alliances and counter-alliances being activated across Europe. The intricate alliance system in pre-war Europe played a crucial role in the escalation of World War I. The dual alliances, ententes, and mutual support treaties transformed the assassination of a single archduke into a continent-wide conflict. This system ensured that once one power became involved, others followed suit rapidly. The mobilization of armies marked the definitive start of World War I, as millions of men were called to arms and sent to the front lines. This massive military buildup, fueled by the previously established war plans and the belief in a swift victory, set the stage for early confrontations that would expand into prolonged warfare. The Western Front during World War I epitomized the brutality of trench warfare. Soldiers on both sides lived in appalling conditions, facing endless barrages of artillery fire and the threat of gas attacks. The static front lines, marked by trenches from the North Sea to Switzerland, saw massive losses for territorial gains measured in mere yards. Trench warfare fundamentally altered military strategy and combat. The extensive use of trenches enabled prolonged periods of stalemate, with neither side able to secure a decisive victory. This led to battles such as Verdun and the Somme, which are infamous for their high casualties and minimal strategic outcomes. On the Eastern Front, the war presented a different landscape of warfare. Vast and less fortified than the Western Front, mobility played a significant role, with sweeping movements and encirclements characteristic of battles here. Key battles like Tannenberg and the Brusilov offensive reshaped perceptions of Eastern troop capabilities and strategic value. Naval power also had a crucial role in World War I, highlighted by the Battle of Jutland in 1916. This largest naval battle of the war involved the British Royal Navy and the German Imperial Navy, marking a pivotal moment in naval warfare. Although inconclusive, it helped define the use of battleships and changed naval strategies for the remainder of the war. The global impact of World War I extended far beyond Europe, affecting colonies and external territories engaged in the conflict. Colonies provided crucial resources and manpower, while the war itself spread to places like Africa and Asia, making it a truly global conflict. This broadened the geographical scope of the war and shaped its global perception and impact. The home front during World War I was marked by drastic economic and social transformations. Nations shifted their industries towards war production, which caused shortages of consumer goods and altered daily life. Women and children entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers, filling roles traditionally held by men who were now at the front. Key battles such as the Battle of the Somme and Verdun became infamous for their scale and the staggering number of casualties. These confrontations did not just decimate armies but also reshaped the strategic thinking of the remaining forces, pushing generals to reconsider their tactics and the use of emerging technologies. Propaganda played a critical role in maintaining morale and influencing public opinion during World War I. Governments used media to enlist volunteers, secure funds, and justify the continuing effort of the war. This manipulation of information not only fueled nationalistic feelings but also painted the enemy in stark, villainous terms. The entry of the United States into World War I in 1917 provided a significant boost to the beleaguered Allied powers. Fresh troops and material resources helped to tip the balance of the war. This involvement marked a pivotal shift, positioning the U.S. as a forthcoming dominant force in global politics. During World War I was transformative, challenging pre-war gender norms. As they took on roles in factories, offices, and even in military support positions, women gained new skills and independence. This shift set the stage for future movements toward gender equality in voting rights and professional fields. The impact of World War I on art and literature was profound. The brutal realities of trench warfare and the unprecedented scale of human suffering found expression in the works of writers like Wilfred Owen and Erich Maria Remarque, whose vivid depictions of war reshaped modern narratives on conflict and heroism. As societies mobilized for war, women took on roles that had traditionally been reserved for men, working in factories and serving in auxiliary military capacities. This shift not only challenged existing gender norms but also laid the groundwork for future movements toward gender equality, marking a significant change in societal roles and perceptions. The Russian Revolution of 1917 was both a World War I placed on Russian society and a pivotal event that influenced the course of the war. It led to Russia's withdrawal from the conflict and inspired a wave of socialist movements across Europe and beyond. The Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 coincided with the final year of World War I, compounding the misery of wartime conditions. It swept through crowded military camps and urban centers, killing millions worldwide and overshadowing the war itself in some regions, thereby straining already depleted resources and morale. Post-war Europe faced staggering economic consequences. Nations emerged from the conflict burdened with debt, facing inflation and a need to rebuild infrastructure. The economic strain contributed to social unrest and set the stage for further international conflicts, as countries struggled to recover and redefine themselves in the war's aftermath. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, drastically reshaped Europe by imposing harsh penalties on Germany. It aimed to prevent future conflicts but was criticized for its severity, leading to economic distress and fostering resentment that contributed to the rise of Hitler and World War II. Post-war Europe saw the creation of new nation-states, as empires disintegrated and national borders were redrawn. Countries like Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia were formed, embodying the principles of self-determination but also planting seeds for future ethnic and regional conflicts. The League of Nations was established with the hope of preventing another global conflict through diplomacy and collective security. Despite high aspirations, the League struggled with lack of authority and failure of major powers like the USA to join, ultimately proving ineffective at stopping aggression in the lead-up to World War II. The global power shift saw the United States and Japan emerge as significant international players. Europe's devastation made it less dominant, altering global trade, colonial dynamics, and military influence, setting the stage for a new order in international relations. World War I's psychological impact was profound, affecting soldiers and civilians alike. The introduction of total war and the horrors of trench warfare left lasting scars, contributing to widespread psychological distress known as shell shock, which influenced approaches to mental health in the decades that followed. The role of minorities in World War I was pivotal yet often overlooked. Soldiers from colonies and ethnic minorities were recruited en masse, facing severe hardships and discrimination. Their contributions, however, significantly bolstered the war efforts of their respective imperial powers, highlighting the complex interplay of race and duty in wartime. World War I's influence on subsequent geopolitical tensions cannot be understated. The harsh terms imposed by the Treaty of Versailles, among other agreements, sowed the seeds of resentment and economic hardship. These conditions eventually contributed to the rise of extremist ideologies and set the stage for World War II. The legacy of World War I in popular memory and culture is profound. It not only changed how wars were fought but also how they were perceived. Literature, films, and memorials dedicated to the Great War continue to shape public understanding and commemorate the colossal human sacrifices made. The development of air warfare during World War I marked a significant technological shift. Initially used for reconnaissance, the role of aircraft quickly expanded to include direct combat and strategic bombing. This era saw the birth of the fighter ace and the beginning of aerial warfare as a critical element of military strategy. The use of chemical weapons in World War I introduced a new level of horror to warfare, violating previous conventions and ethical standards. The deployment of mustard gas and other agents caused devastating injuries and deaths, leaving a lasting impact on international law and military policies regarding the use of such weapons. Economic warfare during World War I, notably the Allied blockade of Germany, designed to restrict the importation of goods, including vital food and raw materials. The blockade severely hampered the German economy and civilian food supplies, contributing to widespread hunger and exacerbating the suffering of the German populace during and after the war. Diplomatic maneuvers in World War I were complex and crucial, involving secret treaties and shifting alliances that often escalated the conflict. Efforts by nations to secure advantageous positions or undermine opponents through diplomacy were prevalent, with significant maneuvers like the Zimmermann Telegram influencing the United States' decision to enter the war. The impact of World War I on civil liberties was profound, with many governments expanding their powers significantly. In an effort to control public opinion and suppress dissent, measures such as censorship and the suspension of habeas corpus were implemented, which reshaped the balance between state authority and individual rights. Intelligence and espionage took on new forms and critical importance in World War I. Initiatives like the British MI5, the deciphering of encrypted communications, and the use of aerial reconnaissance were pivotal. These efforts not only influenced military strategies but also laid the groundwork for modern intelligence practices. Armistice Day marked the cessation of hostilities on November 11, 1918, symbolizing hope for peace but also the immense toll of the conflict. The immediate aftermath saw relief mixed with immense grief and the daunting task of rebuilding nations and addressing the political and social upheavals caused by the war. Post-war Europe faced the daunting task of reconstruction, and treaties like Trianon and Sèvres reshaped national boundaries and imposed severe penalties, further fragmenting the already fragile Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires. These agreements sowed seeds of resentment and division that would later contribute to global instability. The challenge of post-war reconstruction extended beyond physical rebuilding to addressing deep social wounds. European nations struggled with political, economic, and social reconciliation, striving to integrate war veterans and repair divided communities while managing the widespread grief and loss inflicted by the war. The harsh terms and economic hardships imposed by these indirectly contributed to the rise of totalitarian regimes. Leaders like Hitler exploited public discontent, using it as a platform to promote radical ideologies that promised restoration and revenge, setting the stage for World War II. In the colonies, the impact of World War I shifted imperial policies and fueled movements towards independence. Colonial soldiers returned home from the fronts with new political awareness and less tolerance for imperial domination, accelerating the push for self-determination and reshaping colonial relationships. World War I fundamentally transformed the modern world, not only through its immediate devastation but also through its long-lasting effects on political borders, society, and global power structures. The war and its aftermath reshaped public consciousness and redefined the course of the 20th century, leaving a legacy that continues to influence global affairs today.